Hello everyone and welcome to our first session for the Cultural Responsiveness Training. My name's Rebecca Karate. I'm a registered psychologist. I've been with LTS for coming up to about 5 years now. I'm also a Yamaji woman, so that is the nation. I'm from the Nunda mob, and basically if you're based in, I'm in WA, so that is Kalbarri up to Shark Bay. But I am living off country at the moment, about 2 hours away from Kalbarri. So you'll have to bear with me while I work through this technology. Technology sometimes is not my strong point. But firstly, I'd like to do an acknowledgement of country. I'm presenting to you today on the grounds of the traditional country of the Southern Yamaji people. And I'd like to begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and community. I pay my respects to their cultures, to their elders, both past and present. I would also like to bring my well wishes from the Nunda people to all of you on the call today. I also, just something to note, I do use First Nation, Mob, Indigenous, Aboriginal, all interchangeably. In our family, we use Aboriginal. I know some people, some other First Nation people don't like the use of that term. It's varying where we can't group everybody under one umbrella. So I use the words interchangeably. I don't mean any disrespect by doing that. Just a bit of a warning that some of the content that we discuss may be distressing for some individuals. You're welcome to take a break at any point, pause it, come back. If you are feeling overwhelmed, there's a couple of helplines there, and we've got some other supports in a little bit as well that I'll talk to you about. Also, just a warning for any mob that are on the call. You should be aware that the presentation may contain names, images, or voices of deceased persons. So today, what we're going to look at is what cultural responsiveness and cultural safety are, what relationality is and what that means, reflection on biases and microaggressions, just a bit of a, place where where you can find the policies on cultural safety and know how to get further support. Just remember, you can't learn everything from a book. It's your responsibility as a practitioner for continued learning. So I would strongly encourage you to engage in your local mob. Like I said earlier, we can't be grouped under the same umbrella. What my mob's beliefs and practices are will be very different for the mob, let's say on the East Coast or even down south. I live up north. Down south, mob, their practices and beliefs can also be very different. So I would say engage in your local area in tours, get out on country, get involved in Indigenous events and continue your learning that way as well. Today, some of these topics may be uncomfortable. They may cause uncomfortable reactions. So I just want you to, while we're going through this, just take some time to reflect on what's being brought up for you. Consider discussing it in supervision or with your line manager. We've also, don't forget we've got our own EAP provider. There is a link here. I will try and click it and see if I can bring it up for you. Hopefully that's sharing that information sheet. If not, you can open that in the PDF document, the link there. Okay. So let's jump straight in. Um, this is the definition that's outlined in the Professional Competencies for Psychologists by APRA. I'm not going to read it all out, but basically, we as psychologists are responsible for the understanding of the history and the biases of psychology and the impact on diverse groups. So not just our Aboriginal people, but other minority groups as well. What this may look like is being curious in the initial assessment about maybe the client's connection to their country, to their family, to their culture. It's also really important to note that you may feel like you're culturally competent, but it's actually the opinions of our clients that determines whether they feel culturally safe or not. Why is this important? There's a lot of different reasons. I think the strongest quote I could find here is if we get assessment wrong, we're going to get treatment wrong. And sometimes we make a lot of assumptions. Um, we've only got an hour to gather all of that information. But I think, you know, we need to be culturally responsive. It builds trust. It hopefully can break down some of that power imbalance. It allows for better understanding. So, just in an example, let's just say in a family violence setting, psychologists may suggest to the client that they should speak to their community leaders for support. And, we're talking about Indigenous community leaders and an Indigenous client. However, for someone from a small community, sometimes disclosing abuse may lead to stigma and isolation as well. Um, if it results in separation, it could leave the person with with even fewer family or community connections. So I think we've just got to be mindful of some of those things, especially when we're dealing with small communities. Sometimes the perpetrator can be, a community member that's an important community member as well. So we just have to be mindful of what kind of advice or suggestions we give our clients. So the formal definition of cultural safety, I'll be referencing information from the National Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Health Workers Association, who developed their cultural safety framework in 2013. The framework aims to increase the capability of healthcare systems to deliver a culturally safe and responsive health service. And basically, they define cultural safety as the outcome of education that enables safe services to be defined by those who receive the service. So again, it's determined by our clients. They also note that any unsafe cultural practice is any action which diminishes, demeans, or disempowers the cultural identity and well-being of an individual. So again, it's really important for us to be aware of, the different cultural nuances and kinship systems and, what being on country means and those sorts of things. And I think, again, I'll just say it's not about learning every cultural practice. I don't think anybody is expecting you to know every single difference and, the different cultural practices. It's about reflecting on our own assumptions and our power or power imbalance in a therapeutic relationship. And, just giving you some extra knowledge to be able to reflect on these sorts of things. wanted to take a minute and just get you to reflect, just as a starting point, where you may be on this continuum of cultural competency. So if we have a look at what characterizes each stage, cultural destructiveness is characterized by intentional attitudes, policies, and practices that are destructive to cultures and consequently to individuals within the culture. Cultural incapacity is characterized by a lack of capacity to help minority clients or communities due to extremely biased beliefs and a paternal attitude toward those not of mainstream culture. Cultural blindness is characterized by the belief that service or helping approaches traditionally used by the dominant culture are universally applicable, regardless of the race or culture. These services ignore cultural strengths and encourage assimilation. Cultural pre-competency is characterized by the desire to deliver quality services and a commitment to diversity indicated by hiring minority staff, initiating training and recruiting minority members for agency leadership, but lacking information on how to maximize these capacities. So, this level of competency can lead to tokenism if we're talking about an organisation. Cultural competency is characterised by acceptance and respect for difference, continuing self-assessment, careful attention to the dynamics of difference, continuous expansion of knowledge and resources, and adaptation of services to better meet the needs of diverse populations. And then lastly, cultural proficiency, this is what we're aiming for, um, is characterized by holding culture in the highest esteem, seeking to add to the knowledge base of culturally competent practice by conducting research, influencing approaches to care, and improving relations between culture. It's also about promoting self-determination. So for a minute, I just want you to pause the recording if you have to, or I will give you a minute just to consider where you feel you sit on the spectrum, and then consider what actions you could potentially take to move up towards cultural proficiency. Relationality. Um, this is really, it underpins, it's a core principle of many Indigenous worldviews, including my own worldviews, including a lot of First Nation, Australian First Nation perspectives. It it reflects the belief that everything is interconnected. People, land, water, animals, ancestors, um, you know, eh, we are all connected. This generally contrasts with the dominant Western framework, which often emphasizes individualism and independence. In our belief system, we do not exist in isolation. Our identity and well-being is shaped by our relationships with all living and non-living things. So this interconnectedness means that actions have ripple effects. What we do impacts others and the environment and vice versa. Relationality guides how we approach healing, decision making, and community life. It's about responsibility, reciprocity, and respect. And it's important that clinicians keep this at the fore when dealing with our Indigenous people. There's a beautiful quote here by Dr. Tamara McLean. She was the first female Aboriginal doctor, and she says to us, health is about so much more than simply not being sick. It's about getting a balance between physical, mental, emotional, cultural, and spiritual health. health and healing are interwoven, which means that one can't be separated from the other. In further modules, we will kind of start looking at the social emotional well-being wheels and different things that you can use in your practice. This module today is really just kind of giving you a bit of an overview of different topics. A story that I'll share here just quickly is that I spent 10 years living up in Broome, not on my country. One day I was lucky enough to be flown out to the Sunday Islands. It was an abandoned island where our Indigenous people had set up camp, and there were these beautiful shells, and I decided that I was going to collect them and make a like a mobile out of them. So I took them back to my home, and uh, there's a very big belief that you shouldn't take things from country. Um, and so I just grabbed these things, wasn't even thinking. I was really quite young, um, or in my early 20s, and took them home. For a good 3 years, I was really sick. I was every week just a new illness, and I could not work out what was happening until one day it dawned on me that it had coincided with the time that I took the shells. I couldn't get back to Sunday Island, um, and what I had to do was just return them to the beach in Broome and hope that that was enough. Um, Yeah, I learned my lesson. I do not take anything from anywhere now, not even my own country. If I do, very rarely, I won't even let my children or my nieces or nephews take things. But if we do, I always say it has to be off our own country, and you have to ask the ancestors first. Um, so, I mean, that's kind of an example of, you know, how everything is all kind of intertwined. Um, so one of the session objectives is for you to be aware of relationality and how it may operate in a clinical setting. So every clinician brings our own cultural background, values, communication styles, and assumptions into the therapeutic space. Being aware of these relational processes, how you form relationships, interpret behavior, use power, or respond emotionally, helps you avoid imposing your worldview on clients. And why that matters is it prevents unintentional bias or misinterpretation. It reduces the risk of pathologizing culturally normative behavior. It creates a safer, more validating therapeutic environment. Relational awareness helps clinicians notice when their default interpersonal style, such as directness, eye contact, your facial expressions, boundaries, it may not align with the client's cultural norms. So research consistently shows that the therapeutic relationships is one of the strongest predictors of client outcomes. Awareness of our own relational processes enable us to be more intentional, flexible, and attuned. So for MOB, it's our belief that we are connected to everything and everything is connected to us. For clinicians, a relational process with an Indigenous person may be sitting, deep listening, showing respect, and yarning all occurring at once. So just a quick breakdown of what these terms mean, and then I've got a couple of videos for us to watch. So yarning is a culturally grounded process of conversing with and relating to others. It's a structured sharing of stories. It's back and forth. It shares stories and knowledge, and establishes mutual expectations and responsibilities. So in the two videos I'm going to play, this first one is from Dr. Miriam Rose Ungamo. I think I've said that right. She's an Aboriginal activist, educator, and artist who explains what deep listening is.
To know me is to breathe with me. To breathe with me is to listen deeply. To listen deeply is to connect. It's a sound, the sound of deep calling to deep. Dadidi, the deep inner spring inside us. We call on it, and it calls on us. We are river people. We cannot hurry the river. We need to move with the current and understand its ways. We wait for the rain to fill our rivers and water our thirsty earth. We watch our bush foods and wait for them to open before we gather them. We wait for our young people as they grow. The time for rebirth is now. If our culture is alive and strong and respected, it will grow. It will not die, and our spirit will not die. I believe that the spirit of Dadidi that we have to offer will blossom and grow. Not just within ourselves, but in our whole nation.
So a beautiful little video there. Um, and basically, hopefully that gives you an idea of what relationality is. We're really in tune with with weather elements, with, country, the animals that live on the country, those sorts of things. A good example is at the moment here in Geraldton, we have dragonflies and butterflies out. Normally they come at the change of season. It's so beautiful. There's so many flying around. But we generally know that the change of season's coming and we need to start preparing for that. The second video is about 3 minutes long, and it's from Stan Grant. He is an Indigenous journalist who talks about respect and what that means to him and his family.
Many of you would know by now that I'm stepping away for a little while. Sometimes we need to just take time out. Sometimes our souls are hurting, and so it is for me. I've had to learn that endurance is not always strength. Sometimes strength is knowing when to say stop. And to those who have sent messages of support, thank you so much. But I'll be okay. Please send that support and care to those of my people and all people who feel abandoned and alone, who are wondering whether they have a place in this country and who don't have my privileges. To those who have abused me and my family, I would just say, if your aim was to hurt me, well, you've succeeded. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I must have given you so much cause to hate me so much, to target me and my family, to make threats against me. I'm sorry. And that's what Yinjamara means. It means that I'm not just responsible for what I do, but for what you do. It's not just a word. It is sacred. It is what it means to be Wiradjuri. It is the core of my being. It is respect. It is respect that comes from the earth we are born into, from God, Bayami. If I break that, I lose who I am. I am down right now. I am. But I'll get back up and you can come at me again and I'll meet you with the love of my people. My people can teach the world to love. As Martin Luther King Jr. said of his struggle, we will wear you down with our capacity to love. Don't mistake our love for weakness. It is our strength. We have never stopped loving and fighting for justice and truth, the hard truths to speak in our land. Yinjamara Winangana means to live with respect in a world worth living in. And we in the media must ask if we are truly honouring a world worth living in. Too often, we are the poison in the bloodstream of our society. I fear the media does not have the love or the language to speak to the gentle spirits of our land. I'm not walking away for a while because of racism. We get that far too often. I'm not walking away because of social media hatred. I need a break from the media. I feel like I'm part of the problem. And I need to ask myself how or if we can do it better. To my people, I have always wanted to represent you with pride. I know I might disappoint you sometimes, but in my own little way, I've just wanted to make us seen. And I'm sorry that I can't do that for a little while. To my family, I love you. And to my mum and dad, Bavadu Wiradjuri, Gibi, Diramatalinya, Baju Wiradjuri, Mandangu. Good night.
Again, just a little excerpt from Stan Grant, who was talking about respect and what that meant to him and his family. And hopefully, again, you can see the relationality between people, country, ancestors, and things like that. Just again, I want you to pause this. I won't pause for too long, but if you can pause for a minute and consider what relational processes underpin your family, your community, and your cultural exchanges. So next up, I want to talk about bias. I know a lot of us will probably already know much about bias, but just again, I guess this is a really good reflective exercise just to see kind of where you sit with bias, and more specifically your unconscious bias. So bias is a tendency or preference that can influence our decisions, our perceptions, our actions. And again, we're only going to focus on the unconscious ones. And the reasons why I want you to reflect on this is hopefully it will help improve your self-awareness. It helps in reducing that power imbalance, the possible discrimination that may occur. can enhance our decision making, and the biggest one for me is building trust. If we have those culturally safe environments, if our clients feel culturally safe and supported, they want to come back and they want to keep accessing our services. So unconscious biases are social stereotypes about certain groups of people that individuals form outside of our own awareness. The first type of bias listed here is similarity bias, which is the tendency to favour people who are like ourselves. Similarities can come in the form of several different common attributes: similar physical appearances, hobbies, educational or occupational backgrounds, things like that. The second is confirmation bias, so the tendency to reinforce our beliefs by using information that is only consistent with our experiences, beliefs, or preconceptions, and dismisses information that goes against what we believe. I use this a lot with my clients, and I'm assuming you guys do as well. Let's just look at, if we have a particular view about a race, we might go and only seek out information that supports this view, following the social media or news outlets that support that view, only engaging in communication with other people who have similar perspectives, and things like that. Our last one is attribution bias, which it's forming a negative impression of someone based on one trait or experience. So let's just, I've come across people before who have been bullied. Maybe they've gone to a bar, they've been bullied by an Indigenous person, and now they have beliefs that all Indigenous people are angry and alcoholics and just cause trouble. That has happened a number of times. And yeah, it's again an unconscious bias that people have. Some of the things that happen if we do have biases, and we all do, it can lead us to create assumptions such as, the superiority, feeling like you're better than that person, or you're smarter than that group, or and again, that leads to a power imbalance. It could be the assumption of correctness, so looking at the quality of being right in the opinion or judgment and free from error. So your opinion is the only right way, and that's how it should be. The assumption of universality. I don't know if I said that right. I always get stuck on that one. But this is where an individual assumes that others think, feel, and act the same way as them. They forget that everybody is individual. We all have the same thoughts and the same ways of being. So you might see these assumptions play out when interacting with your clients, with colleagues, with members of the public. It's interesting to have a look at your own assumptions that occur, but also others as well. I just want to touch on this really quickly. Microaggressions. So sometimes the assumptions that we carry out on the previous slide can transform into microaggressions. They're everyday insults, whether intentional or unintentional, that convey hostile, derogatory, or negative attitudes towards stigmatized or culturally marginalized groups. On average, about 81% of people have reported an experience of at least one microaggression in the workplace. And 30% of people, 36% of people have witnessed just any microaggression taking place. So we might, it might be things such as patronizing language, claiming color blindness, things like we're all just Australian or I don't see color, things like that. Disregarding historical context, so downplaying or ignoring the historical context of First Nations people. Minimizing concerns, so minimizing, concerns. Let's just say Australia Day is a good topic for that. Minimizing concerns, suggesting that Aboriginal people are being overly sensitive, things like that. Dismissing systemic issues. Kind of, again, turning a blind eye and saying that systemic issues don't exist. And that sort of thing. Here's one that I have put down. I experience it all the time. I am fair-skinned, and a lot of the time I get if I say I'm Indigenous, straight away, oh, you don't look Indigenous. That again implies that there's a correct way that Aboriginal people looked. And we all Indigenous people come in different shades and that sort of thing. I think it assumes too that I don't have a legitimate connection to country or culture or anything like that, that I may not practice culture or those sorts of things, that I'm not really connected to country. I don't have a kinship system or anything like that. So that can be, quite frustrating. I think we all accept, I'm sure we all know that we all have unconscious bias. It's part of being human. But if we acknowledge it and try to become more aware of it, we can tackle it. So basically, we do this by monitoring our own thoughts and behaviors, question first impressions and reactions to people, reflect on any quick decisions that you make. Was it, an objective decision, or was possibly there unconscious bias involved? Pay attention to bias relating to diverse groups such as, the elderly or people with disability or gender or, a different race or religion. Challenge your assumptions and do not assume you know best, because that's going to cause us to jump to the wrong conclusion. A really good idea is widening your social circle, exposing yourself to different groups. Just like I said, go and jump out on some of the local tours, get involved with your local Indigenous community groups or events, things like that. Another really important one is, being an upstander. So if you see discrimination or racism happening, stand up and call it out. Another reflection tool I just wanted to put in here is the Johari window model. I'm sure most of you will probably know about this, but basically I'm hoping you can see my mouse here. We have our, the open area, which is assumptions or beliefs that are known to yourself and known to others. We've got the hidden area, which is known to yourself but not known to others. So things that you may know about yourself, but maybe there's shame or stigma or embarrassment or, it's not socially acceptable, so you kind of keep those hidden. We have the blind spot, which is where, you might have beliefs or behaviors that are known to others but not known to yourself. And then we've got the unknown, so, not known to yourself and not known to others. So what I'd like you to do is, again, just, that's information for you. Have a think about, what may be a blind spot for you, what may be hidden, what may be the unknown, and what your open areas are. We will probably revisit this model for reflection in later modules as well. All right. We're going to move on to a case study. And I've got some reflection questions for you in the next slide. We're going to use this same case study throughout the other modules or throughout the other sessions. And we'll keep building on this. So first of all, I just want you to know that, you've got a client come in. He's a 30-year-old Indigenous male. He's presenting with family relationship stress. He reports feeling extreme guilt due to being unable to provide financial support to family members who frequently ask him for money. He currently lacks the resources to be able to meet these requests, and that's causing him the guilt and the stress. So I want you to keep that information in mind. And I want you just to have a think about, when reading that, what assumptions did you make about this person, or even, the Indigenous group in particular? You're not going to have to share this. These are just your internal reflection questions. Where might those assumptions have come from? Did it come from past experience? Did it come from your family and their beliefs, friends, media? Did your assumption influence your behavior or decision, or kind of what you were thinking about, starting to formulate the treatment plan? How might these assumptions have impacted Jack? And if needed, what could you do differently next time to ensure fairness and respect? So I just want you to pause here, spend 5 or 10 minutes journaling your own thoughts. Be honest. It's for self-growth. It's no judgment. Like I said, you don't have to share this to anyone, sorry. But it's a good reflection tool just to see kind of what was coming up for you when that was being read out. Just quickly, we're going to pop here the policies, just the LTS policies, the cultural safety, CD&I, code of conduct for psychologists. They're just some things that you can look up if you're needing more support or information about what our policies are. And just for yourselves, if you need to discuss any of this content further, please bring it up in supervision, discuss with a principal, reach out to the EAP provider if you need to. If you've noticed that some of those biases have, come up for you in that case study, feel free to discuss it in supervision, or with your principal, or if needing further support, obviously the EAP provider. If there's any questions about the content or anything else, you can shoot me an email. I am quite busy, but I will try and respond in a timely manner. But other than that, thank you so much for watching. I hope this has been helpful. Like I said, it's just setting the foundations. The next module we will start, that will probably be a bit more confrontational. We're going to get into the history of our Indigenous people, and things like that. So that one, you may need to take some time in going through. This session was more just kind of setting you up for those trickier discussions. All right, thank you.